All right, so this video I'm going to talk a little bit about the evaluation of pro forma statements. So pro forma basically means that we're doing projected financial statements. So once you've projected an income statement, you've projected a balance sheet, and maybe you can do this for a couple of years, so you just kind of project it further out. Um, what are we going to look at as it relates to that? And how could we evaluate that? Well, one of the things that we could look at would be the inflows and outflows of cash and look at, okay, um, do we have more money coming in? Do we have more money going out? Do we have maybe some big purchases that we're gonna have to make in a couple of years due to the fact that we're really gonna need more net fixed assets? What are some of the things that are happening here as it relates to cash, and make sure that we acquire the cash we need before we need it to make things possible. So that means we want to look at the inflows and outflows of cash that are kind of implied by these financial statements. And that kind of leads into the next point, which is we'd also want to look at our financing needs. So if I am projecting out these statements, and as I mentioned in my prior video about the additional funds needed or external funds needed, if I have a significant amount of additional or external funds needed, then what that means is, I need more money. I need financing. And so I need to go get it. Now, if I'm thinking about issuing stock or issuing bonds, both of those are somewhat involved processes and are probably going to involve working with various financial institutions like investment banks, things like that, the financial markets in order to issue them, particularly if I'm a publicly traded company. If I'm more of a privately held firm, then my financing needs might perhaps be met by borrowing money from a bank, but still that's going to be a process. I need to go talk to loan officers, maybe shop around a bit, go through some applications, submit all kinds of documentation. This takes time. So we'd want to look at, how do these projections kind of indicate things are going to go and what kind of money are we going to need? And then we start making arrangements for it. So that we get the money before we run out, basically, or before we hit a brick wall and we just can't grow anymore because we run out of money. So we want to make sure we avoid basically running out. That's not a good, running out is not a good scenario. Now, something else that's important to mention here is we also need to be thoughtful about how this whole process of projecting financial statements and it's linked to our strategic plans and things like that links back to ratio analysis. So let's talk about that for a moment. Let's suppose you did a ratio analysis for a firm and you concluded that the firm has too much debt. They got way too much debt. Well, if that was your conclusion, part of your plan of implementing the strategic plan that's developed by the firm and everything else ought to involve addressing the fact that the company has too much debt. So if you get to your projections and you conclude, hey, we need more financing. Well, if over there in ratio analysis, you've already concluded we got way too much debt, and over here, we're saying, but we need more financing. And basically what that turns into is, well, probably borrowing money, debt is probably not a good choice. So we're probably looking at equity at this point. And that might be what's necessary because the financial ratios are basically indicating we've got too much debt already. And so that's kind of putting parameters around, sort of what's possible for us and what we can do. And so you need to be thinking about, what did you learn when you're analyzing the ratios, what are the implications of that, and make sure you've addressed the concerns in your forecast. And this actually leads to another reason why certain line items might not change in proportion to sales. What if in your ratio analysis you concluded liquidity is much too low? We just need more current assets to have an adequate amount of liquidity. Well, if that's the case, increasing my current assets just in direct proportion to sales, but also increasing a lot of my current liabilities in proportion to sales is not going to fix that. Basically, my ratio is going to stay probably about the same. And so if I have concluded I need more liquidity, I'm going to need to boost some of those current assets at a higher rate than sales, which means we're doing customized forecasts of the balance sheet now. But we're doing that in order to address the concern that we've realized is the case from the ratios. So if you look at the prior financial ratios, that's going to give you some guidelines about what you should be doing going forward as part of your projections. And you kind of need to check your projected ratios, right? If I got projected financial statements, I can calculate projected ratios. And if I've got projected ratios, we should look at that and say, all right, have I addressed the concerns that I had when I analyzed the ratios to start with? And if the answer is, well, no, okay, well, we need to go back to our plan and maybe we need to think about our projections. And maybe we make some different adjustments to how we project out different line items. Maybe we change whether we're going to borrow or sell stock. Let's make some changes to what we're expecting to do over the next several years to make sure that we have addressed these issues that we have noted. And so basically, that's kind of where I'm getting this, make changes to the plan as necessary. So you could have had a plan, you walked out, but make sure you don't forget to check, like, does this actually make sense? And have we addressed the concerns that we have already identified? Now, importantly, if I start doing projections, and possibly even years in advance, it's really not a question of if you're going to be wrong. It's a question of how much, because we don't know what the future is going to bring. And so that means something is going to be wrong somewhere, right? Hopefully, we're as close to accurate as we can get, but something's going to be wrong. And so since something's going to be wrong and also circumstances are going to change, we need to adapt. And one of the things that we should be thinking about when I have these projected financial statements is, okay, what kind of changes would I make if circumstances change? So what if I built all these expectations expecting 5% growth in sales? What would my approach be if sales went up by 8%? How would I handle that? Or what if sales didn't go anywhere? They stayed flat. What would my response be to that? How would I walk that situation out and make wise choices? And so that's something to think about when you're looking at pro forma financial statements. Things are not going to go according to plan. So what are we going to do when they don't go according to plan? And let's kind of have a plan for that, because that's pretty much the situation we're going to be facing. Okay, hopefully this video helps. Hopefully it makes a little bit of sense. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.